The most freeing part and the scariest part is your career's on you. And so at first, that's me saying no one's coming to save you. You got to get control of your career. But then over time, that's me saying, isn't this amazing? You get to have control over your career. If you look at the history of work, no generation of humans has had as much agency as this generation and these generations are going to have at work over the coming years. Because work is about to get personalized. It's about to index more than ever before on your unique capabilities and curiosities. And so you've got to build around that. What you're hiring for more than anything else right now is two things: AI fluency and a sense of entrepreneurial mindset. And the best way to show those is going to be show me what you've done. Show me your work product and tell me the story around it. And so that's where I'd really push folks to go. It's more than just what skills do you have, not just what degree you have. It's how has that all led to what you've done.
Welcome to Leadership, the podcast where leadership meets real-world insights. In each episode, you can eavesdrop on exclusive conversations with top thought leaders, best-selling authors, and experts in leadership, communication, relationships, culture, and everything else that shapes your effectiveness in the workplace and in your personal life. Leadership is here for you. Now, here's our host, himself a seasoned coach and best-selling author, Dr. Roger Dean Duncan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership. We're living through one of the most profound shifts in the history of work. And for many people, it feels less like a transition and more like a shockwave. Artificial intelligence is no longer a distant concept. It's here, reshaping how we learn, how we create, and how we earn a living. But what if the real story isn't about machines replacing humans, but about humans rediscovering what makes them uniquely valuable? My guest for this episode of Leadership doesn't just study the future of work, he helps shape it. Aneesh Raman is the Chief Economic Opportunity Officer at LinkedIn, the business-oriented social networking service that has more than 1.2 billion registered users from more than 200 countries. Aneesh is a former speechwriter for President Obama and a former CNN war correspondent who has become one of the most clear-eyed voices writing on what AI actually means for the people doing the work. With LinkedIn CEO Ryan Loslansky, Aneesh has co-authored a new book titled Open to Work: How to Get Ahead in the Age of AI. And I'd put it among the most genuinely human pieces of thinking I have read on this subject. AI won't replace you, Aneesh and Ryan write, but someone using AI could. How do we lead through that? How do we prepare our teams, our children, and ourselves? We'll explore all of that right now. Aneesh Raman, welcome to Leadership.
Thank you so much for having me.
Aneesh, your book opens with Apollo 13 and NASA Flight Director Gene Kranz's phrase, a famous phrase, failure is not an option. Why was that the right frame to start a book about AI and work?
Well, that moment and the way we start the book emerged from a meeting that Ryan and I had. It was May last year. And to let people into the behind the scenes of the book a bit, we had been preparing a book that was different than the one that is out in the world now. It was more focused on career frameworks, on how to manage different pieces of what we all want and aspire to across our career. And we met and we realized it wasn't the book we wanted to write, what we had been down the road on. And we realized actually what we want to write is just this book that makes all this more simple for people, explains what's changing, explains that we've got to lean into this moment and help people understand we can get through it together. And in that conversation, Ryan said, I've been thinking a lot about that line, failure is not an option. And we started talking about Apollo 13 and the ways that we opened the book. That was this moment of systems failure. Everything was going wrong all at once.
And the world was watching.
And it's such a powerful story because if you think about work right now, and I agree with your opening, I think we're living through the greatest disruption to work in human history. Everything is getting rewired all at once. And right now we're seeing all these warning signs, just like the astronauts started seeing and mission control started seeing when oxygen started going out into space. And the thing that Gene Kranz did in that moment that saved those lives, but also unified humanity as we watched and waited to see if they could come back home safe, was this idea that don't focus on the impossible odds, focus on the immediate steps. and do each step based on a belief that failure is not an option. And what that thinking allows you to do, first of all, it's to focus on today and tomorrow, not worry about things in 5 years or 10 years, worry about things today and tomorrow and what you need to do. But it also sort of empowers you with this belief that failure isn't an option. So I'm going to think about this in every way I can. I'm going to use every tool I can. I'm going to think about it creatively in ways I never would have before. If you think about how they brought those astronauts home, it was a moment, as we talk about in the book, of human ingenuity and human innovation, unlike perhaps anything we'd seen before. They didn't suddenly create new technology. They didn't suddenly create new science to bring those astronauts home. They used everything they had, and with the human brain and with the collaboration among those at Mission Control, came up with new ideas to do different things with what they had and to bring those astronauts home. And so for us, that felt like a really powerful analogy for what we're all going through. And even as we were writing the book, Jim Lovell passed away, and his obituary in the New York Times had this quote that we have in the book where he said that it was this example of human resilience and human ingenuity. And that's how he's come to understand it. And we end the book with a quote from another one of the astronauts, Jack Swigert, who said, if you judge Apollo 13 by did we achieve the stated aims, we did not. It was a failure. But if you judge Apollo 13 by whether we mobilized and unified the whole world, all people across all cultures and countries, including arch enemies in the space race, the U.S. and the Soviet Union offering help in that moment to the U.S., if you look at Apollo 13 as a singular example of humans coming together, it was an exceptional success. And so that's another part of the story we wanted to land. This is about humanity. We can all come together and we will walk this path into the new world of work individually, but we don't walk it alone. We do it together as humanity, and what a thing that can bind us to build a better world of work.
Oh, yes, what a thing. Now, the title Open to Work was a phrase that LinkedIn sort of made famous during the COVID layoffs. What does being open to work mean in the AI era, and how is it different from, say, 2020?
It's a great question. When we launched this filter, for folks who don't know, on LinkedIn, you have a profile, you have your sort of image that's in that circle, and you can put a filter on it. It's a green filter that says open to work. And we launched it during the pandemic at the time when there were mass layoffs. Remember, all restaurants were shutting down. Companies
Right.
didn't know if they were going to survive. Even if you had a job, you weren't sure if you were going to be able to keep that job. Job insecurity was everywhere. So people were really anxious and looking for help. And we launched that filter not just to signal to recruiters who are looking for people to fill jobs that you're available and looking for work, but more importantly, to signal to your community, to your friends, to your family, to your peers, to people
Right.
you worked with before. Hey, I'm looking for work. If you know anything, if you know anyone, think of me. And that filter has really delivered. Over 300 million people have used it. Those that are using it find jobs more quickly because not just the filtering by recruiters, but really that community support. So for us, that was a similarity to this moment, which is you're not in it alone. We're in it together. Think about open to work in that same sort of bat signal rallying cry to get help and support from your community. But then the words open to work matter because this is where it's different. During the pandemic, it really was, I'm just trying to find a job. But open to was really key because the only way we're going to get through this and the only way we're going to get to better at the other end of this is if we as individuals, as societies, as humanity are open to things changing, open to learning new things, open to using new tools, open to imagining in a new way what work can look like if the mind, not the machine, is at the center of it. And so that's been, I think, the thing that's different now is that it isn't about going to get a new job. It's how do we, even in the jobs we're in, change within them and be open to all that we're going to be asked to change about how we work and even who we are at some deep level.
Sure. I know people who are in a job. They have a good job, but their profile says open to work.
Yeah.
It's a new world out there. They're looking for opportunities, maybe a new job in the same organization.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn data shows that 24% of skills for the average job changed between 2015 and 2022, projected to reach 70% by 2030. What has to change in leadership practices to keep up with a number like that?
Yeah, that number, we talk about signal to noise ratio. Claude Simmons, if I'm getting the name right, is the guy that invented that term when you were dealing with phone calls and trying to get the background noise out. What's the signal? That number is probably the greatest signal to me amidst all the data that's out there. 70%, 70. That means your job is changing on you, even if you aren't changing jobs, into an entirely new job. And for leaders, and we have a chapter in the book about this. First, I would say, recognize how big a shift this is going to be. We talk about electricity in the book. When electricity arrived, a lot of folks thought, okay, this is now the new steam engine. It's great. It's new. I'm going to do with it what I did with the steam engine and expect productivity to go up. Mm-hmm. So they would literally put the electric motor where they had the steam engine and productivity didn't go up because this was an entirely new form of energy. And there were some radical innovators at the time who said, no, wait, this is a new form of energy. We have to rebuild workflows around it. Multi-story factories need to be single story. Workers can have their own engine now. That's new autonomy for the workers. We have to completely redo how work gets done in the factory. The people that did that, the leaders that saw productivity surge to levels that they hadn't seen before. So you've got to recognize that 70% means all of work is going to change. That starts with workflows changing around AI. So you've got to be bringing these tools in, making sure that people are able to use them, test them, try them. This isn't top down. This moment is sort of middle out, bottoms up. How are workers using it? What are they finding that's helpful? What are they finding that's not helpful? But then the thing that makes it more difficult than electricity and even than the internet is you're changing workflow around the technology, around AI. But now we also have to change work around human capability because this technology more than any before is going to push what makes us, the uniqueness of humans that we haven't relied upon in the industrial age to the center. And so I think for leaders, intent matters most right now. The story matters most. What we know about the human brain, we tell ourselves stories in order to live, as Joan Didion said. The stories we tell often precede the reality we create. They present a bias in terms of where our attention goes, where our actions go. And so you've got to be as pro-human as you are pro-AI if you're a leader. And you've got to figure out these two things at once, how workflows are going to change with the technology, but how work is going to change with human capability. And my best advice for you, if you're a leader trying to figure this out, is just be curious. Be insatiably curious right now. Read as much as you can. Use the tools to summarize as much as you can. Just start absorbing all of this and start forming your frameworks for how you want to communicate this out to your team or to your workforce. Because without that story, you won't know what you're doing in terms of intent, but you won't be able to rally your team or your workforce towards where you want to go.
Well, not all technology is just plug and play.
Exactly.
You have to be ready to make some changes yourself.
Yes.
Now, you write that fear of change is biology, not weakness. How should leaders talk to teams who are freezing, fighting, or fleeing technology?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to start with extreme empathy. The people that are most excited are generally technologists who have been waiting for AI to emerge and waiting for AI to show what it can do. And their excitement and ambition is fueling a lot of the conversation. If you think about the origins of AI, it's the Turing test. If people don't know the Turing test, it's the original way to evaluate whether AI was emerging as a new technology better than anything before. And in its simplest form, it was AI versus human. Could AI produce something that if you put it in front of another human against something another human had done, they couldn't tell the difference. So it started with chess, then it became writing, and then it's becoming more and more complex things. And we keep talking about autonomous AI, agentic AI, super intelligent AI. If you think about the humans at the other end of this, if the whole story is human versus AI, and if your lived reality of technology has been that it has presented itself in ways that have done some good, but also some disruption that's not been good, in ways that have asked more of you with your time, because now you got to be an email, you got to be on your phone, you got to be responding to Teams or Slack messages.
Right.
You're starting from a place of like credible skepticism at best. Add to that the human brain, which again is the thing that we don't talk enough about, but is the thing that's going to matter most. The human brain, has evolved over millions of years. The industrial age is just a few centuries. So the thing that's in our head hasn't changed much in the 300 years or so since the steam engine arrived. Even though everything about our world has changed, we've gone from 1 billion to 8 billion people on the planet. Everything around us in our day-to-day emerged in those 300 years. That is a small fraction of the time in terms of the brain in our development. So there's some stuff that we're just wired around. We are wired to fear change as humans. And this goes back to survival as a species far long ago. And we are not wired to get exponential change. We can't process quickly the idea that things will compound, the idea that change can completely remake the world and quickly. And this is exponential change. So I think you got to start with empathy, that people are in a really anxious, fearful, uncertain place. Technologists have spent, by the way, the last couple of years getting more and more excited about AI, geeking out more and more about the fundamentals. Right. I've been out there on this book. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is that the rest of the world has not been doing that for 2 years. When GPT first went mainstream, there was this reaction of like, oh my God, what is this going to do? And then pretty much everyone but technologists kind of walked away from it and wanted to see whether it was going to play out as something real, wanted to see what was going to happen with it. Now everyone's coming back to this. I mean, this moment, everyone's like, oh, this is real and this is about to change my job. But they're coming back where they were 3 years ago with fear, with uncertainty, with anxiety. And it's really important then to tell a story that starts there, that acknowledges that and then inspires agency and even aspiration. And that's what we try to do with the book.
You have a chapter titled Let It Go. What are the specific things that leaders need to let go of right now? And which one is the hardest for the average executive?
You know, I'd say the hardest thing for executives is to let go of the idea that all teams are led by people who are just managing the tasks of the team and the execution of the team against predetermined goals and predetermined OKRs and KPIs. It's to let go that you're executing against predictability and stability. Again, to give you sort of empathy for why that's hard, the industrial age, again, only 300 years, gave rise to two things that are going to go away. The career ladder, and we talk about that's going into a career climbing wall, and the org chart. The org chart emerged early in the industrial age, first as a tree, and it was meant to just have information flow upward. But it was all solving for how do we bring order, stability, predictability to rapidly growing organizations. That has stayed true, but then it flipped to the pyramid that we all know well. And that was really about decision making and accountability coming top down based on plans that allowed for stability and predictability around growth. You cannot plan for constant change that's hitting in the way that it's hitting right now. So the thing that you're going to have to let go of is this idea of the org chart and where you sit in it, and that your role is to just execute heads down against numbers that were decided 6 months or a year ago as the things you had to execute against. Because you could very quickly find yourself executing against priorities that are no longer priorities as the company tries to shape shift. Every business is going to go through probably the biggest moment of business transformation ever right now. So you've got to let go of that idea that there is predictability, stability, that any of that is possible again. I think there's some leaders waiting for us to get back to where things were, that this was a moment of sort of like big change, but like other moments of big change, it'll stabilize out. It will stabilize out, but it'll stabilize out into a constantly adaptive labor market and business environment. You're never going to just build, grow, set, stabilize, and then just like keep going for incremental returns. So I think that's going to be the hardest thing.
Yeah, any leader who says this too shall pass is not in a good place.
No, if you are waiting for that to pass, if you are hunkering down, thinking that it'll hit in ways around you, and you'll let that settle out before you figure out how you'll react to it, get going.
The train is leaving the station, folks.
Yes.
Well, now you write about, and you mentioned one of them, you write about specific capabilities that you call the 5 C's that make people better teammates and sharper thinkers. These 5 C's, again, the first one is curiosity, you mentioned, courage, creativity, compassion, and communication.
When we set out to write this book, we didn't want to write a how to AI book. We wanted to write a how to human with AI. And so while everyone else was starting to think about where's the technology going, we realized we had to get smart on, well, where's humanity at? Where's the brain at?
Right.
So we talked to neuroscientists, behavioral economists, behavioral psychologists, organizational psychologists, talent leaders. And what was really remarkable was how not defined human capability is. I mean, humans just haven't done the work because we haven't had to do the work to really define what makes us us, like what is uniquely human. Because in the arena of work, we've just tried to be machine-like to support the machines in the speed and scale of production of goods and services. And so these 5 C's are sort of our first draft for everyone of what sits at the intersection of our EQ and IQ, of our consciousness and conscience, of what will be revealed to be our core strengths when AI out-machines us and takes away the machine-like tasks of work for so many of us. But we hope it's the start of a conversation. And at one point it was 3 C's. People have argued with us about a 6th or 7th C. But we really landed on these as the core components that together have us at our best as humans in terms of what work will require, which is entrepreneurialism. It's sort of where we landed. The human ability to imagine, to invent, to create, to build, everything around us, including AI, emerged because humans collaborated and imagined something that didn't exist before. The nation state, the monetary order, all of it. And so to us, where work is going with the help of these tools that democratize access to knowledge and to building is this entrepreneurialism that sits at the intersection of these 5 C's.
Well, I really appreciated the 5 C's because they point out not only what individual leaders can do with and for themselves, but what they can and should and really must do in the culture of their organizations. Let's go through each one. Curiosity sounds to a lot of people like a soft skill, but you call it the engine of innovation. How does a leader build curiosity into an organization that punishes wrong answers?
You start by stop punishing wrong answers. I mean, in an arena of curiosity, you can go too far and then you're spread across things and there are cross currents and all that. Yes, you have to bring order to innovation. But at the core of innovation is this pushing and pulling and testing and trying and failing and learning that has to be sort of endemic in your culture now. And curiosity is at the center of that. I have often been thinking about this book is sort of, if folks have watched Ted Lasso, it's sort of like us, to make a verb out of Ted Lasso, Ted Lassoing humanity in the locker room, sort of bucking us up. We've got this. And there's this great scene from one of the episodes of Ted Lasso where he harkens back to that, we think attributed to Walt Whitman, maybe someone else, that quote, be curious, not judgmental. That's the core of it for leaders. The org chart asked you to be judgmental. It asked you to take decision-making and accountability and feed it down the organization, tell people what to do, make sure people didn't do anything but what they were supposed to do,
right.
Make sure they didn't fail against what they were supposed to do. Now we've got to breed sort of innovation. So curiosity's got to filter down. So you're going to want to change how you do team meetings at the basic level. You're going to want open debate. You're going to want pushback. You're going to want people to share problems they haven't yet solved and seek sort of pushback and thoughts from others on the team. You're going to want to encourage cross-team work and collaborative work that might unlock something new in terms of a business line or at least a project in how you do things. But you want to go back to what we all started with as kids, that question of why, and asking it more often than you currently are.
Well, over the years, I did a lot of work in the nuclear power industry where there is, let's just say, very little margin for error.
Yeah.
But I saw some great leaders who would not punish somebody for a wrong answer. The next meeting would be, okay, this is great. That was really good thinking. What have we learned that can help us with the next thing we try?
Yes. Yeah.
And people were sitting around the table. You could see the energy. Nobody felt constrained. They were putting stuff out on the table. And, you know, every good thing that happens in an industry like that happens because people were curious.
Yes.
And they were willing to speak up and challenge each other and didn't feel constrained. Well, let's talk about courage. Courage gets harder in public companies with quarterly earnings. How do you build courageous cultures without pretending the consequences don't exist?
Yeah, I've thought about this one a lot because I think one of the things we all as humans have to get better at is how to handle hard well. And if you think about who handles hard well already, it's generally people that have just come of age in life or at work through challenge, through extreme challenge.
Right.
And I'm someone where, you know, begrudgingly, when people would ask me what the hardest part of my career was, I used to say all of it with like a, more recently, I say all of it. And I really wear that as a badge. I mean, I have been through so much. And I've come out the other end with a deeper sense of self, with greater capabilities, greater sort of ability to fail and bounce back. So courage is something that I think is best developed in little ways. You don't need to do a big leap of courage because that can lead to the wrong outcome, or it can be really hard to manage that big of a leap. It's a micro thing. I mean, what's important about the 5 C's are these aren't talents, these are skills. And like any skill, the way you develop them is by deliberate practice over time. It's the small steps that lead to the big leaps. And courage is like that. So find a moment in a day where you're raising your hand for an assignment that is kind of a reach goal for you within your ability, but not something you would have felt comfortable going for. Or say something in a meeting that is, a challenge to what's being talked about and presents a different point of view. Go ask for that coffee with someone who is 2 levels above you in the org, but that you really value their advice and respect their career path. It's just pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And the more you do that, the more comfortable you get with being uncomfortable. And to me, that becomes the fuel of courage. And you can do that just by little things every day.
Again, some of the best leaders I've worked with were very good at allowing people down on the org chart, mentor them. They would deliberately go to somebody who maybe had been with the company for a month and, ask them about, what are you seeing? What are you seeing that you have questions about? And what they would not tolerate was somebody saying, well, we've always done it that way. And sometimes the smartest person in the room is the person who's newest on the team, because they sort of have this naivete, if you will, about asking things. And so that kind of culture can be very helpful.
Your change initiative has the budget. The strategy looks solid, and everyone's nodding along in the meetings, but for some reason, it's going nowhere. Dr. Roger Dean Duncan knows why. After 40 years in the trenches with top business leaders, he knows that change fails when organizations lack the right foundations: trust, accountability, and real communication. Dr. Duncan's free 10-minute assessment shows you exactly where your organization stands. Answer a few straightforward questions that reveal your true change readiness level. Don't waste months discovering the hard way. Get your free assessment today at leadershop.net/change. Again, that's leadershop.net/change.
Now, you draw a hard line between creativity and mixing what already exists. As AI gets better at remixing, what does that demand of human creativity at work?
Yeah, this is like a great debate right now because people are seeing these tools create content, music, videos, and are really worried about what that means for the creative arts and for creativity.
Right.
The way I would think about it is AI is a tool that will make generic possible for everyone. Generic expertise, generic tool building, generic software building. In that world, where generic is available to everyone, generic will appear in more places than we've ever seen it before, including generic creativity. What that means then is that that's the floor. It doesn't mean that that's suddenly the new ceiling and none of us are able to reach it. It means that's the floor now that we all start with. So everyone gets to be creative now because you have tools that can help you produce creative content. And creativity is this classic example where people think it's a talent, not a skill. But like courage, creativity is something we all have in us and that we can get better at day by day. And as more of us get better at it and we use the tools to start from this new floor, it's going to be what emerges out of that is going to redefine human creativity. I mean, human creativity is so unique and it's still so unknown. We don't even fully understand how we do what we do on creativity. If you look at neuroscience research, creativity is having a hockey stick moment right now. More and more neuroscientists are trying to study it, trying to understand it. What makes those brilliant creative types like that? How do they get in states of flow or peak, as it's called, where their brain is just producing insights and creativity at the other level? And ultimately, what we should remember about creativity is it only lands if humans embrace it. Humans are an exceptionally, intrepid, imaginative bunch. We're also an exceptionally unpredictable, illogical bunch. And we write about in the book, in terms of how we wrote the book, it was an intensely human endeavor to write a book like this that acknowledges where humans are at, tries to move us to agency and aspiration. You have to know humans. You have to be human. And creativity to me is a classic arena where the audience of the creative output are humans. And so humans are always going to know best about what other humans are going to want, that deep emotional connection to creative work. And for a business, that means, what new business line should we do? I mean, AI means you could do anything now. You could be a healthcare company that wants to be a tech company. You could be a tech company that wants to now go into movie making. Like, the tools make it possible for any company to almost do anything now because you've got expertise, you've got the ability to build. it's going to be human creativity that allows you to understand, well, what do we actually want to do and what can we do well that we can turn this into something that's a real revenue driver?
Let's go to another C, compassion. Compassion is probably the C that makes some executives, at least, most uncomfortable.
Yeah.
How do you argue for it in a room of operators?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the org chart in the industrial age, the line was like, it's not personal, it's business. And I think that felt real and felt like real talk to people. And it was an important thing for people to understand as they went into business, that if you don't deliver, you're out. And that isn't because we don't like you, it's because you didn't deliver. And I think that obviously that stays true in a capitalist economy where shareholders are looking for returns. And it doesn't matter how nice you are, how great you are, how visionary you are, the numbers are the numbers. But our offering is that to actually mobilize an organization, to get a business to grow, to get a business to manage the change that we're going through, you have to be someone that people want to be around. I mean, Ryan's, a CEO, my co-author, and the higher up he's gotten within not just LinkedIn, but Microsoft. I mean, he's now no longer LinkedIn CEO. He's taken on this broader role as of yesterday where he's EVP of LinkedIn and Microsoft Office. So he's got this broader suite of technologies he's looking at. He'll attest to the fact that the higher up you get, the more important it is that people want to work with you. Because if we go back to curiosity, if we go back to creativity, if we go back to courage, who do you want in that room where there are great debates happening, where the next big idea is getting unlocked? You want to have people that people want to be with in that arena. You want to have people that feel like you've got their back, or that you can inspire them, or that you see them and understand them and want to see them as a full person. So I think it's going to be key to managing and leading in this new era. Because again, you're not managing and leading based on metrics and accountability and top-down decision-making. You're managing and leading based on dynamism, agility, an entire company that's got to be an incubator for innovation. And compassion is going to be key to that.
Well, if people feel punished for being creative, they're not going to be creative.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, let's go to communication.
Yeah.
Communication was the number one in-demand skill on LinkedIn in 2024. Why is it suddenly back on top, and what does that say about how we've been working?
I'll use my own journey on this in two ways. First, with AI, because it's interesting, because when AI went mainstream 3 years ago, it was for writing. It could produce an essay. It could, ask it a question and it could write you a novel. And that was part of the bigness of, oh my God, what's happening, that we all felt when GPT went mainstream. I think it was November 22. I've been paid at times to be a writer. So you can imagine, as me, that was like a big flashing red light, to go back to the Apollo 13 analogy. And so I took a minute to really push past that fear and say, okay, let me see what it can do. Oh my God, it can write. Okay, what does that mean for me? Well, we have a chapter on jobs as tasks in these buckets and how to think about your job changing. Okay, it can write. So it can do first drafts. Actually, that's helpful for me because I'm an overthinker. I always have 12 ways that I would start something. Now I can just dump it all into this tool and have it show me what each of those would look like. And I can kind of skip past the pain and torture of trying to figure that out on my own to just start where I want to start with that feedback loop. We now know it can code. It can do a bunch of stuff, summarizing notes, quick analytics. But for writing, it was like, oh, it can write, but it can do this type of writing. Now, what it writes, we're realizing, is often generic. And we had the whole debate about the M dash, and that means it was written by AI. And you saw humans be like, I don't want to read something that was only written by AI. So now AI slop is a thing, and we're sort of rejecting AI alone writing. Okay, that means it can write, but I'm going to need to do something to enhance what it wrote, because it's going to write something generic. And then I'm going to make it me. I'm going to add in the sort of things that make it clear that my fingerprints are all over this.
Remove the M dashes.
Yeah, remove the M dashes and add the U. And then I realized, okay, if it's going to mean I spend less time writing, because now I've got this tool to help me speed that up, that means I'm going to get to spend more time doing human-to-human stuff, communicating with people in a room, with a speech, with a book rollout, trying to change beliefs and behaviors, trying to inspire energy. And so for a while, I went to every performance I could go to, a Broadway show, a musical, concert, anything I could go to where I could see the masters of human energy building do what they do. And I learned a ton. One thing I learned watching Broadway shows was the power of the pause. Because even as a reporter, I used to talk a lot and talk quickly to get it all out, to bombard you with information. And I remember sitting in these rooms and there would be this crescendo moment of the story. and they would just pause, and it would just pull everything together, and everyone would just lean forward. And so I spent more time on that. What is it like to be human to human in terms of communication? So I think in that process, I've learned how powerful communication is and how powerful storytelling specifically is. I talked about Joan Didion, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. Story of self is the most important story we tell, and really understanding how you can edit, adjust, even rewrite your story of self as you go into this new world is going to be critical. But then the way that we communicate out, not just who we are in a job interview, but who we are as a company, as a team, to the outside world, that is becoming more and more important by the day, because authenticity is becoming more and more important by the day. And AI, again, like creativity, raises the floor on communication, because now everyone can write. People that were petrified of writing, people that didn't do LinkedIn posts or didn't do op-eds or didn't do a Substack, now they can do it. But now that anyone can do it, authenticity is what's going to build out from that and stand out.
Got to have your own voice. Now, you replace the career ladder with a climbing wall. I really like this metaphor. What's the most freeing part of that reframe, and what's the scariest?
It's the same. And I've been thinking about this a lot. The most freeing part and the scariest part is your career's on you. And so at first, that's me saying no one's coming to save you. You got to get control of your career. But then over time, that's me saying, isn't this amazing? You get to have control over your career. If you look at the history of work, as we've done in this book, no generation of humans has had as much agency as this generation and these generations are going to have at work over the coming years. Because work is about to get personalized. It's about to index more than ever before on your unique capabilities and curiosities. And so you've got to build around that. And you no longer have the clarity of the ladder that was giving you predictability, stability. I'm on this rung, I'm going to that rung, I'm getting my boss's job, my boss's boss's job. You don't have that clarity, but let's not forget that clarity was quite limiting. If you didn't get the right degree or the right job title, if your boss didn't like you, if your organization wasn't growing in the right way, you had no option to get to that next rung. Now you're climbing a wall, and that means you can climb in any direction at any moment. You always have a move. You can always move.
And sometimes a lateral move might be the very best thing for you.
And down even. I mean, I have started my career over 3 times. I went from a peak as one of the best known reporters at CNN to an unpaid intern on the Obama campaign, and a campaign that hadn't even won the nomination, let alone the general election. I went from having everything I could want as an established reporter to buying Dunkin' Donuts on Saturday to bribe my way in with the security guard so I could go in to the office, because as an intern, I wasn't supposed to go in on the weekends. I mean, that is a down to go up. And then you end up writing for the president, and then that opens up new doors. So what's freeing and scary at the same time is you can go in any direction. And what that frees you up is you have optionality, but what that demands of you is you've got to have conviction on what you're trying to do. And you don't need to have the 10-year plan. You know that over time you're trying to get to that summit. Everyone's trying to go up, but you can go in any direction to go up now. So what matters most to you now? Is it making more money? Is it gaining new skills? Is it like trying to pivot into a new sector? I mean, when I left the White House and went into startups, I really wanted to grow my skills beyond just communications alone. And I wanted a growth marketing job, basically. So I had to go to a startup and I had to start over again. That was probably, again, going down to go up. So you've got to figure out what matters most in this moment. But then with that decision, you get to move in ways you couldn't before on the wall.
Sure. And you don't even know what the summit will be.
100%. I mean, this job I'm in, our CEO made it up for me a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
There is no way I could have imagined this is what I'd be doing at this point in my career when I started out trying to become a reporter and a White House correspondent. Like literally, I wouldn't have been able to comprehend it.
Sure. And at LinkedIn, you don't even have to buy Dunkin' Donuts to get in the door.
I know. Yeah. Although,
what a deal.
If I ever have a choice on coffee, Dunkin's my choice. So I'm still going there.
Okay. So you push people to define their own why, what, and where. How do leaders guide that conversation with employees who grew up expecting the company to define those things?
You know, a lot of this is this idea that no one's coming to save you. And the less fear-inducing way you'd want to do that as a leader is like, this is really on you and let us help you figure it out, but you've got to figure it out. You know, that 70% number we talked about earlier, when I'm out there talking about it, one of the things I try to underscore, I was just at University of North Texas talking to students about this. No one is coming in 6 months or a year and saying, here's how your job is changing by 70%, and here are the things you need to do to adapt. Your boss doesn't know what you do every day. Their boss doesn't know what you do every day. Only you know what you do every day. And you're going to have to do the math of like what that means with these tools and with your unique capabilities in terms of how your job is going to change by that 70% into a new job. The job I have built exactly around my unique skills and capabilities. Everyone's going to have to do that kind of work over time and figure out like, how is that going to play out at work? So as a leader, you've got to give people the space to do that. You've got to make sure they have the permission to use the tools, to try new things, to come up with new ways that they want to bring what they do best to the job at hand. You got to give them a percentage of time is the easiest way to do it. Some percentage, 70, 80% is going to be what the plan is and what we got to do. But you've got 20% of your time to play with. That's your playground. Do you want to go try and partner with another team on something? Do you want to try and go do something that's well outside of the work that you're doing day to day, a sort of stretch project, a side project? You've got to give them space, but in that sandbox, that's on them to bring the curiosity, to bring the creativity, to bring the courage, to bring the compassion, to bring the communication to how they figure out where work goes. So in the book, we give everyone sort of the toolkit for both your job and your career. So we're giving you all the sort of frameworks to start with. Why do you work? I want to get paid. That's what like almost all of us are working for. But as you build from that, what kind of work are you trying to do? What drives you? What do you do? And what do you do best that you can get paid for? It isn't about passion. It's about talent as skill. Scott Galloway, I was on his podcast. He talks about this a lot. Even Reese Witherspoon's out there on it. Like, what do you do best? Like my version of explanatory storytelling that builds coalitions around economic opportunity, whatever your sort of unique secret sauce is that people will pay you for, that like can get you paid. You don't want to do it without that, but like, what is that? What do you do? And then when you know why you work and what you do, then you know where you want to work because you want to be an environment that's going to let you continue to grow, that's going to value what you do. So we give you that sort of framework in there. We give you the framework on jobs, but it's up to you. I mean, ultimately, this is going to be you holding yourself accountable as an individual, as a team leader, as a CEO, as a prime minister, as a president, as a mayor, as a governor. It's on us individually to make sure that we're doing the work to build to better for ourselves and for the communities around us.
We need to take more responsibility for our own destinies.
Yes. Yes.
Now, you describe a shift from credentials to capabilities. What's the first thing that HR leaders should change in their hiring process to reflect that?
The questions you ask, and I know a lot of HR leaders have already started doing this, but it's not where'd you go to school? What degree do you have?
Hopefully that's on the resume.
Yeah, but I think the new resume is the work product. So all those questions that are on the resume, they're going to tell you less and less about someone's ability to do the job. Now it's what have you done? That's literally, if you ask that one question, show me what you've done. Show me a project you've delivered. Show me a business line you helped launch. Like you weren't the everything of it. No one is. Everyone does something as a group, as a team, if it's a big thing. But what did you actually do? And tell me how you failed, how you learned, how you adapted, how you got creative. The thing about the tools, especially for these younger folks who are worried about the end of entry level work, and that's not going anywhere, or how they're supposed to get experience if they don't have the jobs where they're supposed to build experience, gaining that know-how. You can build with these tools. I mean, no matter your age, no matter your career stage, you can spend the weekend and have something to show for what have you done. You can show how this thing that drove you led you to create something. You know, as an example, I've got a friend who's a product manager at a big tech company, but on the weekends has built an app because he had daughters who just turned 6, but they were born prematurely. They had some sort of nutrient deficiency that made it hard for them to keep down food and to eat enough to grow. And so you had to figure out this whole math of like when to feed them, when they might throw up, when that means they should feed them to not throw. And he built an app on it. And now other parents who are going through the same thing are using that app. And that would be his story of what have you built? I took this idea, I turned it into an app. It was really hard. I had to change 3 times. I had to restart 5 times. That's going to be what gets you in the door now. And so what you're hiring for more than anything else right now is 2 things, AI fluency and a sense of entrepreneurial mindset. And the best way to show those is going to be show me what you've done. Show me your work product and tell me the story around it. And so that's where I'd really push folks to go. It's more than just what skills do you have, not just what degree you have. It's how has that all led to what you've done?
Sure. Well, LinkedIn sits on what might be the best workforce data set on the planet. What signals are you seeing that from all of this LinkedIn data that most people seem to be missing?
The 70% is the biggest one. And I just want people to, if you take one number away, take that your job is changing on you in big ways, even if you aren't changing jobs. So start changing your job on your terms. If you're coming into the labor market, the other big data point is that you're likely to have twice as many jobs as a generation before you. Twice.
Yes.
Now, I think we think about that as job hopping, which traditionally people have done to get more pay. And that's a completely understandable thing. But as you said at the start, you might change jobs a lot within the company you're in. In fact, that would be a great outcome. If you find yourself in an environment where you're able to change jobs as work is changing within a culture, within an institution where you're gaining expertise and knowledge, that's kind of the best of all worlds. And that's why I think if you're starting out, where you work matters so much more than what you do. There's some job title you think you need to get. I need to be a software engineer. I need to be a associate product manager. And you might have a company that's willing to give it to you. And you're like, that's what I need because I need that notch. I need to check that box. But if that is a company that isn't adapting right now, that isn't making sure employees are able to use these AI tools, that isn't giving permission to try new things, to challenge old assumptions, to build in new ways, you're going to be living on an island while the rest of the world is moving forward, and you don't want to get stuck there. You might go to a place that has a job title that you've never heard of or that doesn't sound that interesting, but is an environment where they are leaning into this moment and they're saying, come to do this, but we can't tell you what you're going to be doing in a year or two because it's all going to get changed and merged and blurred lines. You might be merging sales and marketing, not sticking in one or the other. That's where you want to be right now. So the 2X, I think, is something that should give us all, but especially younger workers, a freeing sense that like, you don't have to have it figured out. Just put yourself in an environment where you're learning, you're growing, you're adapting, because you're going to have a bunch of jobs. And then the other one I just remind folks is that work is changing, not ending. And so our data is showing, over 1 million new jobs around AI, not just technical jobs, but data center jobs. And then historically, we know new jobs come at the other end of disruption. MIT has a statistic I use a lot. 60% of the employment in 2018 did not exist in 1940. I mean, think about it. Data scientist wasn't a job 20 years ago. Creator wasn't a profession 10 years ago. By the way, probably the most exciting data to me, the thing we're seeing a real spike on is LinkedIn members who are saying they are a founder or a creator. And so to me, that's the whole game here. If we get to a new age of entrepreneurship, that isn't just being more entrepreneurial at work. That is a avalanche of new businesses that form all over the world in all sorts of different ways, in rural America, on the coast, like just a boom of new businesses that humans are innovating around new areas that businesses could go tackle. And so that founder creator spike is like really exciting and interesting to me, especially if countries start to support new business creation with the right policies that make it possible for more people to take that leap and make it possible for small businesses to really grow into bigger businesses. So new is coming and it's already here at some level. So don't worry about work ending. Just focus on work changing and how you want to change with it.
Well, I think of that young man who created that app to help his daughters with their nutrition issues. Even if I were looking for somebody to join my company, I wouldn't be looking for an app to help children with nutrition, but I'd be looking for that kind of mindset.
Yes.
Thinking outside the boxes. I mean, you can apply that kind of mindset in any kind of environment.
That's exactly it. And that's what we believe too, yeah.
And that guy is not going to be able to tell you what his job's going to be 5 years from now, maybe 2 years from now.
Yes.
Well, if a listener closes this episode and does exactly one thing differently tomorrow morning, what do you most hope it is?
I mean, I know humans, and so I'd say the most important thing is that you do one thing differently. I'm going to make it really simple and let you choose what it is, but you got to be doing something different every day. And the goal of it is to be able to bet on yourself, to know that no one's going to beat you at being you once you define that. Because what I'm promising you and going to spend the rest of my career doing is trying to make sure that the institutions around you adapt in a way that finally means if you bet on yourself, that bet can pay off. Because in the industrial age, it wasn't about betting on yourself. It was about betting on that checklist of things, get that degree, get that job. So you got to start doing things differently. If you aren't using AI, start using AI. Try one tool. Take it, use it for something you hate to do. Can be in your life, exercise plan, meal plan, can be some project at work. Whatever it is, this is the easiest to use technology that humans have ever created. You can literally just talk to it like another human. You can over-explain, overthink, give it everything, and then ask it how it can help you. Ask it to challenge your thinking. So use the tools and start using them every day. I promise you, there are ways you can use them every day. And the more context you give it, the better value the help is. So you're going to want to build a rhythm of it. If you're fluent with the tools and you think that's all you got to do, that's not it. Then you go to the 5 C's and think about one of those 5 C's that you're going to do something differently about tomorrow. Be courageous, be creative, whatever it is. And if you feel like you got even those down, okay, then how are you changing your job by 70%? Pick a thing, a task that you're going to move over to bucket 2 from bucket 1, or that you're going to build out in bucket 3. For the next 10 years at least, we are all going to always have something we can be doing every day to do something different. So just start doing something different every day.
And people with that mindset look forward to going to work on Monday morning.
Yes.
Well, Aneesh Raman, thank you so much for joining us on Leadership. As Aneesh reminds us, the future of work isn't something that simply happens to us. It's something we help shape through the choices we make every day. The rise of AI may seem unsettling, but it also creates space for something powerful, a return to what makes us most human. If you take one thing from this conversation, let it be this: the skills AI cannot touch, curiosity, courage, creativity, compassion, communication, were never actually soft. They were just undervalued in an economy obsessed with efficiency. That economy is ending. The leaders who thrive now will be the ones who trade credentials for capabilities, ladders for climbing walls, and titles for tasks worth doing. Share this episode with someone figuring out what comes next, and remember, nobody beats you at being you. Be sure to leave a review of our podcast. Even a single sentence can fuel the algorithms that promote the great content that the Leadership podcast provides. And for free resources to help you in your leadership journey, go to leadership.net. That's leadership.net. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and spread good cheer wherever you go. For Leadership, I'm Roger Dean Duncan.